Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the Bears making the playoffs. We're going to be talking the Cubs Yu Darvish trade, and we're going to be talking about the Blackhawks' latest signing, or re-signing as it may be. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Sure, the season is not going on right now, but in just a few short weeks, we will have AHL hockey back. So, head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, sign up for season tickets and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, before we start this, I just want to say, we made the playoffs. We, the Chicago Bears and the fans, we made the playoffs after a 6-game losing streak and with a blowout loss to end the season. How does that happen?
Would you say this is one of the weirdest Bears seasons ever? I mean, considering everything that happened, considering they started 5-1 where they really didn't look that good. They just got a couple of crazy ass wins, and then everything kind of comes back down to earth and you lose 6 games in a row, and then you beat the living daylights out of some really bad teams. So, you know, you show that you're at least competitive enough to not be a complete bottom feeder. And then, of course, you know, what should be a demoralizing, normally season-ending loss to your biggest rival, you're still going to have an extra week of football for this team. I just think this is one of the weirdest Bears seasons we've seen.
It is really weird. And it's a weird position to be in because the fans, by and large, are calling for Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy's heads.
Right.
And, you know, everybody wants the Bears to win, but we recognize the reality of things, that what are the odds they can go to New Orleans, beat New Orleans in New Orleans, the next week follow that up by going to Green Bay and beating Green Bay?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, if we did somehow win next week, we would have to go to Green Bay, right?
Yeah, Green Bay will play the team with the lowest seed. The Bears have the lowest seed, so if they win, they have to go to Green Bay. Do you really want to go to Green Bay and play them again?
Imagine getting embarrassed by them 3 times in a season.
The Green Bay fans would absolutely...
We're used to 2, but 3?
Yeah, the Green Bay fans would be just chomping at the bit because they'd be like, all right, let's just whip the Bears 3rd time in a row. I mean, you know, a miracle could happen and somehow the Bears could win, but that's just... You know, that is so low on the probability chart that, you know, you can't count on that.
No, you can't. And, you know, we're going to one of the hardest places to play. Granted, it's not going to be normal because there's not going to be a full crowd there. But if I do remember correctly, they do allow some fans in the Superdome. But regardless, Saints are really tough to beat at home. Now, if you were to ask me, I should say, what would be a better matchup for the Bears in the first round? Would you rather go to Lambeau Field or would you rather go play the Saints? Neither is promising. Neither is likely going to result in the win. But let's just say this. I feel like the chances are microscopically slightly better for beating the Saints than it is for beating the Packers this year on any given Sunday. I mean, I went into today's game thinking there was absolutely no chance the Bears were going to win this game, and obviously I was right. But going to New Orleans, I'd say, okay, there's probably a 90% chance that they can lose, but there's still that little opening where you say, you know, Drew Brees is old, coming off big injury. He's not playing so great. Isn't Alvin Kamara questionable right now? And
Well,
the
he's
Saints
got COVID.
Right. So what's the? I mean, is he for sure out? I really don't know what's going on with that.
I don't know. I mean, he's gonna have to test negative pretty soon.
Right. Right. All I'm saying is, either way, I don't think the Bears are going to win. I really don't. But if there was some window of opportunity where they could take advantage and somehow win, in New Orleans, it would probably make a little more sense. Now, if we were playing the Saints of like even a year ago, a year or two ago, where their defense was really just stinking good and Drew Brees was still in this prime, I would put it right up there with today's matchup in Green Bay, saying, yeah, there's no chance. But I'm going to say that there is a microscopic chance next week, but it's not very big. I don't expect them to win. I expect it to be ugly. I don't expect Mitch to be able to step up on the road in the playoffs. I'm not expecting it at all. But, you know, you still have a game to play. You got to play it.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, that's the thing. It's the game has to go on. You're going to play the game. You're gonna have to get on a plane in a couple of days, head down to New Orleans, and forget about this Packers loss. And it was an ugly one. So, do the Bears have a short-term memory where they could just block this game out and go to work? I don't know. Here's the reality though: is the Saints are a very good team.
Yes.
Not going to deny that. But if Alvin Kamara doesn't play, suddenly they become a much less good team.
Mm-hmm.
They do have some offensive line issues. If you're able to get to Drew Brees, and Alvin Kamara doesn't play, that makes them vulnerable. And if you're able to do what the Bears were able to do in the first half of this game, I feel like you very well could beat the Saints. But those are a lot of ifs. And they're not only a lot of them, they're all pretty big ifs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, we can look so many ways on the Saints side of the ball, but you got to look at the Bears side of the ball too. And you look at what happened today against Green Bay. Pretty much all your flaws were exposed today. And I know we'll get into the game itself a little bit, but just to kind of sum things up, you have a quarterback that can beat the hell out of bad teams, but when it's prime time against the big boys, just can't hang with it. We saw too many bad decisions. We saw a bad interception. We saw him throw a little pass on a free play. That is not something you want. Sure, the throw to Darnell Mooney downfield was really nice, but even so, you were able to get down the field and you couldn't get it into the end zone outside that first drive. So, that's not going to win you games. And also, the defense, while it did give them a chance in the third quarter, ultimately it couldn't get the job done. They gave up, 21 points in the first half, and then they pulled away at the end. You weren't getting enough. You had some flashes, but that wasn't really enough there. So, I mean, just looking from a Bears perspective, they could be playing a lower seed, and you'd say, you know what, I don't think their chances of winning this game are all that great. But, the football is weird. The NFL is weird. If the Saints have a few guys out and you get a few bounces go your way, then maybe you do have a chance. But again, it's like you said, it's a lot of ifs. The better you are at football, the less ifs you have. I mean, frankly, I'd be surprised if Green Bay doesn't win this NFC. The NFC is not very good. I think the Seahawks are the other team that has a really good chance to win. And I guess you could put the Saints in there too. I just think they're too flawed right
I mean, here's
now.
Here's the thing. The NFC is weird. Like, the AFC, I think, is far better as a whole, but
there's no question.
The NFC, winner is going to be by matchups. Green Bay had the Saints number, but Tampa Bay had Green Bay's number and made them look really bad. But it's going to be matchups. It's completely matchups. And Green Bay is clearly the best team in this conference, and they have home field advantage. But if they run into a team, and I think their defense, I think that's their Achilles heel is their defense. I mean, it's clearly not their offense. Their defense is their Achilles heel, and they're able to beat the Bears. They take a lot of chances. They know the Bears can't go deep. They take a lot of chances, knowing that Aaron Rodgers can pick the Bears defense apart. So it's they can't do that with everybody else. But we saw a little bit of a recipe of what to do against them early on in this game. And the Bears started this game absolutely perfect. They marched down the field, and they took up 7.5 minutes and scored a touchdown. So at the end of the first quarter, Green Bay was still on their very first drive. It wasn't until the second quarter that they scored a point. So it was, you're like, that's perfect. You keep Aaron Rodgers off the field.
Yeah, and I will say this too. If you are going to look at the biggest weakness on the Packers, like many years in the past, I don't think their defense is anything great. I think it can play well, but I think it is exposable. And like to your point, that's what the Bears did. And if we're just going to go into this Bears game, I might as well just say it. If we're going to go into detail, what frustrates me is the fact that this game was there for the taking at one point. You had a lead early, everything slipped away, and it looked like the game was about to get out of hand. Then all of a sudden, you get a few more points on the board. You would have liked more, but you still got within reach. And then you made a few stops. I mean, they were down by a score at one point? I mean, the game was there for them to take over. Honestly, I was expecting a blowout and a rout. And if you look at the final score, it looks like that's what it was. But if you watch the game and you followed along, you'll know that there was a sizable point in the game early in the second half where the game was in reach, where it was winnable for the Bears. And once again, you shoot yourself in the foot. You can't take advantage of big plays you make. I mentioned the Darnell Mooney play. You drop several interceptions. I don't get why the Bears can't hang on to Aaron Rodgers' picks. We've seen it multiple times.
Yeah, you're right. Going into the fourth quarter, the Bears were down by 5 points.
Yeah, you were down by one score. You could have scored a touchdown taking the lead.
And there's just the Bears make mistakes and aren't able to overcome them. The Packers make mistakes and have no problem overcoming them. And here's the thing. I got a couple of texts during the game. Why aren't the Bears kicking field goals when they get down there? Here's the reason. Because if you're playing the Green Bay Packers, they score touchdowns in the red zone. You can't match field goals for touchdowns. You just can't do it.
You can't.
You can't get enough stops. You might be able to get a few stops on Green Bay on defense. You're not going to get that many. And if you aren't going to get stops, you're going to get routed. Now, if you can stop them regularly, then sure, you can go for those field goals instead of touchdowns. But you eventually got to get touchdowns. So, Matt Nagy made the right choices in these games going for the fourth down. I just didn't always agree with the play call on the fourth down. So on that first drive, you went for it on fourth down. I thought it was a bad play on third down. You had David Montgomery get hurt, and you bring in Artavis Pierce on, that's been sitting cold, and you bring him in for a short yardage situation, just gets stuffed right up the middle. And then you come into a fourth down from a shotgun position. You're like, oh my God, the Bears really, you're not gonna run out of the shotgun on 4th and 1. It just, that's too long of a delay in getting the game or the play going. So you need to pass if you're going to go out of a shotgun. So you basically set up told the defense you're going to throw, and it wasn't a very good throw, but Miller made the catch and they got it. And you're like, okay, but then you look at the very last one. The Bears are down there, fourth and half a yard, and they rolled out Trubisky, rolled the pocket right, which I'm fine with, but the problem is, so you go from a shotgun, you're already telling the whole league, everybody in the watching at home, the defense, everybody, that you're passing. On 4th and 1, you're not gonna go from a shotgun and run it. At least not a smart play. And then you roll the pocket, but at that point, then you've isolated half the field. So you've already taken away that it's not gonna be a run. You've already limited it to half the field. And then the way the play was set up, you only had one person to throw it to, and that was Allen Robinson. So you really set it up where Allen Robinson had to win a one-on-one matchup, and Mitch had to throw it well. And I was like, that was a very bad play call on there. Right decision on going for it on 4th down, but bad play call.
It was frustrating to watch the play calling in this game because I'm sure you can agree, and I'm sure many Bears fans would agree, so many times they were playing scared. That's the way I saw it.
They just didn't play a smart game. There was too many big plays. That 47-yard touchdown pass. How in the world are you going to have probably the slowest non-lineman on your team playing middle linebacker on Tampa 2 cover 2 defense? So you have Danny Trevathan dropping back to cover a wide receiver, dropping deep. Like, Aaron Rodgers saw that, recognized that right away, and was like, I'm just going to throw it up. And my guy's going to have be able to beat him. As long as I can make this throw, that's going to be a big, big gain. And there he goes. Sees it, gets a little bit of separation, and boom, perfect throw, touchdown. Nobody was catching him.
Yeah, that was frustrating. You know what I thought? You mentioned settling for field goals, and I thought a really big moment in the game was when it was tied 7-7, the Bears were driving again, and you're hoping you can make it 14-7, march down. As soon as they kicked that field goal, I said, that's not good. You can't settle for field goals. I mean, I'm sure you felt the same way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, the thing is, the Bears, when they get down, you watch Green Bay and you watch, some of the very good teams, when they're down in the red zone, the way they look, it's like, nobody can stop us. And it just, you feel like there's no way they're not going to score a touchdown. When the Bears get down there, you're just like, oh God, what are they going to do? And the Bears, Mitch Trubisky almost threw another interception in the end zone. Like, the only reason it went straight into the guy's chest. The only reason it wasn't an interception is the wide receiver it was going to and the cornerback that was covering him, shielded the defensive back's view. And when the ball came, like when he finally saw it, when those two ran by, it was, kind of like in hockey when you shield the goalie from seeing the puck and he doesn't have time to react. They just, didn't react. And, otherwise that was an interception in the end zone.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I've argued with so many trolls online over the last couple weeks, and they're like,
Trolls.
oh my God, they drive me fucking crazy. It's, you just got to fix the offensive line. Mitch is going to be fine. Or, draft a quarterback later in the draft and just let him sit. And I'm like, Tyler Bray has been sitting for 8 years. Does that mean he's good now? Like, just because you draft somebody and let him sit and, quote, learn, like, they know how to play quarterback. It's just playing quarterback in the NFL is really hard.
Yep.
It's, we've gone through it before. If you don't pick in the quarterback in the top 36, you're so unlikely to have a quarterback that's worth anything. And sure, the hit rate of the quarterbacks in the top 36 isn't very good either, but it's still way better than quarterbacks outside the top 36. So it's, if you're going to go with a draft pick quarterback, the Bears have to draft one in the first round. Plain and simple, unless they want to trade back into the first round.
Yeah, we got to get through this playoff game first. But yeah, this game to me shows just clearly how this team can't hand with the top teams in there. You are stuck right in the middle. Just you're plastered. Back-to-back 8-8 seasons. You are 16-16 your last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
This is exactly where you are.
And you're in a position where you're going to be going up next week against a high-scoring team. You played a high-scoring team this week, and you're again without Jalen Johnson, and you're playing with inferior cornerbacks outside of Kyle Fuller. Buster Screen, who, we've had ups and downs with, but he is out. Jalen Johnson is out, and you're with Duke Shelley and Kildor.
Pray for their souls, man.
You're playing with backup secondary, so it's tough. And in this game today, the opening kickoff, we were so close to being in a stupid bad position with, accepting or touching the ball and putting your foot out of bounds. Like, that's a very heads up play, but you need to make sure that your foot is out of bounds when you touch the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like very smart decision, but I think he didn't know exactly where his foot was. I think he slipped. I mean, what I'm thinking happened is that was the plan, and he slipped his footing a little bit and touched the ball earlier than he was expecting to. But you can't have mistakes like that by putting it that close.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, a lot of bonehead things happen when you watch the Bears. you rattle your head around. You're thinking, man, oh man, oh man. In a game with these stakes,
ultimately you look at it and
dropped interceptions, man. That's what really bugs me.
Yeah, ultimately you dropped interceptions. I mean, there was dropped interceptions on both teams, but the Bears got to intercept those. I mean, the Barkevius Mingo one, that could have been a pick six. I mean, that was a great play by him to break it up. Very athletic play. I still like Barkevius Mingo, but if he could have caught that could have been very easily have been a pick six.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
But you look at this game, and the defense, you need to improve a few things. I think some of it's health, some of it's your scheme. I think a lot of it was bad scheme, and I think and we'll get to that, I think, a little bit in a few minutes. But I think there's a lot of bad scheme. But on offense, I don't think we're as far off as maybe we once thought we were. The big issue is one of the spots that we need to upgrade is the hardest position in sports to upgrade, in the quarterback. This game should really remind people that Mitch Trubisky, what we saw the last couple weeks, was a mirage.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have some good pieces on offense. Dave Montgomery, I think, is a very solid running back. You look at what he's done this year. You look at his total numbers. He's over 1,000 yards rushing. And he's had a bad offensive line around him through much of the year. So give him credit for what he's been able to do. And he's been able to effectively bounce off guys and get extra yardage. You have Allen Robinson. He's obviously a talented wide receiver. Darnell Mooney looks legit. That kid looks legit. And if you add, a little depth on your offensive line, then you can improve there. I mean, you do have some good old linemen. You need James Daniels to come back and be healthy. Cody Whitehair is a good player. You obviously need some more help there, so, you can address that in the offseason. But yet the quarterback, I mean, that's just a real killer. I mean, I will say this. At least it wasn't like the offense we saw in the middle of the year with Nick Foles, because that was horrifically terrible.
Right. And here's the thing is, the offensive line looked bad in the middle of the year, and you're seeing improvement. And I think a lot of it stems from Sam Mustipher. Is Cody Whitehair, I've been screaming it since he moved to center, is he's not a center. He's a pretty good guard. He's not a center, but he went in there and was playing center. And from the bad exchanges that you had for a long time, to the line not knowing their, being able to call the plays from the being the offensive quarterback. I mean, the offensive line quarterback. You just didn't see that from Cody Whitehair, and you're seeing that from Sam Mustipher. He's very smart. He's a very good center, and I think the Bears found something with him. And it sucks that now he's a free agent after the end of the season.
Yeah.
So they're gonna have to pay him and figure that out, because they're not in a good salary cap situation.
No, there's gonna be a lot to figure out there.
Yeah, I mean, they're not in the same position as like the Eagles and the Saints, but they're also not in a good position.
Doug Peterson doesn't have a fan in Carson Wentz, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, Carson Wentz is going to be demanding a trade soon. And I don't think Carson Wentz is a bad quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if he finds his way to Indianapolis, because
Me too.
if you can get him for cheap, I mean, Eagles are going to have to eat a lot of that salary, and if you can bring him over, I think you could win with him.
And at least for the Eagles, they have Jalen Hurts as their future. So it's not like they're just going to be getting rid of a quarterback and completely starting from scratch. I mean, Jalen Hurts looks like the guy going forward.
Yeah, right. But with the Bears, you're in a real tough situation. Unless you can figure something out with Nick Foles, or you're willing to. I mean, if the salary cap was higher, you might be able to finagle something by eating the money, designating him as a post-June 1st cut, and splitting that salary that's owed to him over 2 years. So I'd be thinking like $4 million each year for the next 2 years. You're like, okay, that's doable, but you're already in a tight crunch if the cap number is going to be $176 million, like it's being reported it's going to be. So you might end up having to have Nick Foles. Mitch Trubisky is an unrestricted free agent. And do you want to bring him back? I think it's a tough gamble, and I've probably wavered on this, that if you could bring him back fairly cheap, maybe that's the way to go. But I think you sort of have to go draft a quarterback, or if you don't see anybody you like that's still available when you pick around 20th now. We were talking about maybe drafting 10. Now we're going to be drafting probably 20th. And it's what quarterbacks are left, and do you like any of those quarterbacks? If not, you're going to be looking to either trade for somebody or find another stopgap, like I don't even know who's going to be available. Cam Newton. You know,
It's not going to be much.
Yeah.
There's not going to be much available, and you're going to have Nick Foles next year, and I don't think any of us want Nick Foles to be starting week 1.
Yeah, no, that's not what you want. And it's not a bad thing on Nick Foles, but he's either going to be a really expensive backup or somebody you're going to look to part ways with. And you know, the Bears got a lot of things to figure out come this offseason.
They do. They absolutely do. And I think it's going to be very annoying and very painful. And I think that's why a lot of fans are not too thrilled that they've kind of just fell into this playoff position. I mean, they wouldn't be in the playoffs under normal circumstances, but with this expanded playoff, here they are at 8-8 getting into the playoffs. And, you know, we've heard the rumblings today that Matt Nagy's job is pretty much safe. And, you know, I've said in the past, if you're to hang on to one of Matt Nagy, Chuck Pagano, or Ryan Pace, if you had to pick one to hang on to, I would say Matt Nagy. I mean, I think they really need to move on from Chuck Pagano next year. He seems like a great guy, but his scheme just isn't working. And like you've said many times on this show, do you trust Ryan Pace to find the next quarterback? I don't, and I don't think any Chicago fan does. So there you go.
Here's the reality. I think people are going to, within the organization, the people that matter as far as making decisions, I think they're going to see Matt Nagy be like, you know what? He turned it around. This team didn't quit, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to be like, we need to keep Matt Nagy. Now it comes down to, well, if you keep Matt Nagy, how in the world do you fire Ryan Pace? I mean, sure, they've done it in the past, forcing a head coach onto a new GM, but that's bad. If you're bringing in a legit general manager, what legit general manager is going to accept the mandatory head coach? Unless it was a situation where, you know, if a GM retired and they were inheriting a good head coach, you're like, okay, you know, that's a good head coach. But if you're coming in and you're a legit head coach and a team that's just mired in mediocrity, you're like, you know what? I want to bring my guy in. You're tying my job to somebody else, and I want to pick him, and that's an absolutely fair thing. So if you're going to keep Matt Nagy, then you almost have to keep Ryan Pace. They're tied together at this point. They're joined at the hip. And I ultimately think it's going to be Chuck Pagano that is going to be the sacrificial lamb in all of this, because you can fire your defensive coordinator and be like, see, we're making the changes that we need to make. The defense didn't play well enough. We saw the improvement on offense, but the defense didn't play well enough. And you can fire a Chuck Pagano. But I think we're going to see Ryan Pace and we're going to see Matt Nagy next year.
You know, I know we made our bet, and I'm not surprised that I'm looking at myself saying I'm probably going to be wrong. And I'm going to honor that bet. Don't worry. I am going to honor the bet that we made a few weeks ago. But as I see it right now, I'm thinking that Pace and Nagy are both going to be back. But I will still honor the bet. Now, here's a predicament. Let's say somehow, some way, Nagy stays, Pace is fired. They bring in a GM who retains Matt Nagy. What do we do?
Wait, what was the question?
If one stays, one goes.
Okay.
Because I believe the bet was both stay or both go.
I think then we call it a wash. I think they both stay.
Right now, I would think so too. Again, not backing out.
Yeah, it's tough. This organization the Chicago Bears hiring front office folks is such a painful thing for them. It's not so much the money paying somebody, where some other organizations, namely the Bulls, they don't want to pay multiple coaches or multiple GMs. They just don't want to do that. I don't think that's the issue with the Chicago Bears. My issue is I think making a choice of a general manager and a head coach for them is such a scary thing. I think that's the right word, scary, that they don't like to tinker on football side of things. That they would rather be like, well, maybe if I give them another year and another chance that this gets turned around, and they're going to give every benefit of a doubt in order to not have to go through that process again. And I honestly think that's the situation right now, is they're like, okay, this is not the year we wanted to have. They didn't play like they should, but do we want to go through that hiring process again? And I don't think they do. I think they're terrified of having to make another GM decision, and it's and it's going to be easier for them to just stay pat than it is to take action.
You know what's really funny is that they're probably in their skybox right now saying, how can we keep this together? And then they just got the ultimate gift, because you can twist everything, take everything that happened out of context and say, guess what? This Pace Nagy scheme has brought us to the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years, and we've never had a losing season. I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, that sounds pretty good without any context of what is happening and what is going on.
And you know what? Is smart football fans, they know the context, and they're not going to be happy. They're not going to be happy with this status quo. And I was telling somebody on Twitter that was, I don't know if you know Ross Reed. He was saying that same thing, that they're probably going to fire Pagano and everything else is going to stay the same. And I agreed with him, and I said, Pagano deserves to be fired, but here's my ranking of order of who needs to be fired. Ted Phillips, first and foremost. I mean, he's been in that job for a long time, and it has been a bad era of Bears football for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that goes Ryan Pace, because he's put them in this quarterback position. He's put them in the financial position that they are in, and they don't have the depth that they need, and they don't have the capital, the draft capital, in order to make the moves they need to make in order to be a contending team. And he's been there long enough to judge his drafts. And his first round draft picks, by and large, have been abysmal. The ones he's had. Then next would be Chuck Pagano. He's got a star-studded defense, and they are shitting the bed. And then after that is Matt Nagy. And you can make an argument for every single one of them to be fired, but I would say Matt Nagy is the least deserving of that group.
Yeah, and he still has his flaws, obviously, and he still is one where you look at and say, this has been an issue for a number of things, but at least you look at Matt Nagy and say, if he has the right coordinators around him and he does his job as a head coach in terms of motivating the team, getting them hyped up, I guess, if you want to use that word, he's better than most of the guys we've had before. So at least there is some justification with Nagy, where Ryan Pace, you say he's done a few good things, but more bad than good. And then you just look at the whole Ted Phillips era as a whole and you say it's not good whatsoever. So yeah, that's why I'd say Matt Nagy, if it works out where Matt Nagy's the only one who stays and everyone else goes, I think that's very unlikely. But if that were the outcome, I'd be okay with it.
I mean, here's the thing is the offense hasn't been very good most of the year. They figured out a lot of things, but they're never going to be, and it's establishing a good running game is going to make everything better, but you're limited what you can do with Mitchell Trubisky as your quarterback because he can't stretch the field. And you're right. Mm-hmm. There was the play where there was a neutral zone penalty on the defense, and instead of throwing it deep, knowing that there was no chance that it could be a turnover, it was either a big play or it was you redo on it with a 5-yard penalty. Like, why in the world don't you go deep? He just doesn't have the mental capacity to understand football, and he threw it for a short pass that almost got intercepted. And you're like, I mean, I guess even if it got intercepted, it was going to get called back anyway. But why in the world are you going to throw a contested 4-yard pass in that situation? Why? Just take a shot. You have no problems taking a shot when there's a lone guy with triple coverage. So why in the world wouldn't you, when there's the risk of getting it intercepted, why in the world wouldn't you throw that when there's no risk of getting an interception? Why? I just don't understand. It's the lack of awareness. It's the game hasn't slowed down enough for him. And you watch, sure, he had really good games against some really shitty teams, but you look at those defenses that he played, and they were, the last 4 games prior to this were 4 of the 6 worst defenses in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And this Green Bay team defense is statistically good, but I think the fact that their offense is so good, it masks a lot of the warts on this defense because they're playing with the lead so much. And it's a lot easier to play with the lead as a defense than it is to play from, when your team is, close or behind. It's a completely different animal. And I think they got the benefit of having such a good offense. And this is a slightly above average defense. And the Bears, once they faced them, Mitch Trubisky looked pedestrian.
Yep.
You don't even see the flashes. Like that throw to Mooney, that was a way underthrown ball. Mooney made an exceptional catch.
Yes, he did.
The one really good throw that was there was that there was one deep one to Allen Robinson. Then he made the one arm catch while he was warding a guy off. That was a good throw. But other than that, even some of the easy throws, they're not on target. And the thing is we talked about in college, the thing that he was exceptional with was the accuracy. You looked at the radius, the catch radius of a guy, and he had a tight window where he was throwing things really perfectly with guys in stride in college. And you're like, okay, the one thing you can look at the accuracy. And it's weird. 2 things that typically don't change from college to the pros is you don't really lose accuracy. And if you throw a lot of interceptions in college, you typically throw a lot of interceptions in the pros. And Mitch Trubisky stopped being accurate from the college to the pros, and Deshaun Watson started throwing less interceptions. What the hell? Those are like the 2 old adages.
Exactly. Now, here's the other thing, too, that just kind of drives me crazy. When you see nice catches downfield deep, where it is required to make a nice catch, that plays like the Moon play, if he leads them, that's probably a touchdown. Like, think about it. Making a nice catch looks good on the highlight reel, but you're also potentially taking away touchdowns right then and there.
Yeah, we don't have big run after the catches because balls typically are either thrown contested or they're thrown behind, where then the defender doesn't have to do anything, just makes the tackle. If you throw one right nice in front of somebody and they catch it in stride, they can keep running. Whether that's a slant or whether it's a deep ball, whatever the case may be, you throw it perfectly in front of somebody and let them catch it in stride, they just keep running. When you throw it behind them, they have to slow down. When you underthrow it, they have to stop. This quarterback can't make the throws. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I would love it if Mitch Trubisky, if we figured out the quarterback situation. We haven't. We haven't figured it out. And we're just so used to shitty quarterback play in this town that we somehow magically will blame anything but the quarterback if it's, even remotely pedestrian.
Yeah, unfortunately, because we don't know what a real good one looks like now, do we?
No, we don't. Jay Cutler is the greatest quarterback the Chicago Bears have ever seen, and we saw how frustrating he was as a quarterback.
Yeah, I know.
Like literally, there was a term, good Jay and bad Jay, and you didn't know which one you were going to get, and that was the single greatest quarterback this franchise has ever had.
Yeah, that's it's depressing.
It really is. It's super depressing.
If you want to speak of depressing, while we've been talking, I've been doing some numbers, fact checks, and math that I want to play a few games with you, some Bears trivia games. Basically, I have some questions for you that I'm going to ask. It is both fun and sad because it shows you just how good the Bears have been the past 2 decades. So are you ready for a little trivia / number games?
Sure.
Okay, let's see. Where should we start? All right. The Bears are about to play a playoff game on the road for the first time in quite a long time. Do you remember the last road playoff game the Bears played in?
The last road game, the Bears playoff road game?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't they play the Saints with Urlacher?
No.
When was the last road playoff game?
Because that if you're thinking of the NFC Championship, that was at Soldier Field.
Okay. Oh, because didn't they play in New Orleans earlier in the season that year?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that's probably what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Geez, I can't even think offhand.
No guesses?
See.
You want me to give you a clue?
It was probably... Wouldn't have been the Super Bowl year.
Nope.
Oh, my God. Was it going back... Was it going back to... Oh, my God. I can't even think. It's got to have been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Go. Just tell me.
So we're going back to the Dave Wannstedt era. The last time we played a playoff game on the road was Saturday, January 7th, 1995. The Bears lost to the San Francisco 49ers 44-15.
How old were you during that game?
I was not even a year old. Not even a year old. I was born in May. That happened in May of 94, and that happened right at the new year of 95. So that is the last time the Bears played a playoff game on the road. Because remember, after that playoff appearance in the 94 season, they would not make the playoffs again until 2001. That's when they went 13-3 with Dick Duran. They lost in the first round to the Eagles at Soldier Field, the final game at Old Soldier Field. 2005, they lost to the Panthers at Soldier Field after a bye week. Then in 2006, they lost the Super Bowl, and Super Bowl doesn't count as road. That's a neutral site. 2010, They beat the Seahawks, lost to Green Bay, both at home, and then the Cody Parkey double doink that happened also at home. So there you go. Now, I'm going to follow up this question with this. Who was the Bears quarterback the last time they played a playoff road game? I should ask, who were the quarterbacks? There were two of them.
Eric Kramer.
Mm-hmm.
In 90, Dave Craig.
Nope. This guy actually got the win in their playoff victory in Minnesota the week before.
That would have been Steve Walsh.
Correct. Smoking Steve Walsh.
Wow. I was trying to remember that back that far, and I was like, okay, because that was after my guy Peter Tom Willis.
Peter Tom Willis.
So I'm like, Kramer was the quarterback those couple years. So yeah, it was like Dave Craig and Steve Walsh. Wow.
Yes, Steve Walsh that season started 11 games, and let's see. Let's look at his stats, shall we? So in 11 starts, 12 total games with the Bears in 94, he threw for 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and just over 2K yards, 2,078 yards. He was 208 for 343. That is a 60.6 completion percentage, an AV, according to Football Reference, of 7. So pretty average.
Bears quarterbacking.
So that was 1/2 questions. Here's the next question I have for you. How many Bears coaches now have made the playoffs multiple times since the Ditka era?
Lovey.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt Nagy.
That's it. That's it. Trestman and Fox never made the playoffs. Dick Duran took them to the playoffs once in 2001, and once that 94 run. That's it.
Ooh. That stinks.
Yes. Now for a final sad guessing game. I took the Bears' total wins going back to 2000. So we are talking the 21st century of Bears football. And I divided it by the number of seasons to look at how many games on average the Bears win per year. Do you have any idea where their average yearly win total is? Around what number?
Okay, since 2000. 7.
You're pretty much right there, 7.86 if you round up to 2 decimal points. So if you take this era, if you want to count this era, the 21st century era, whatever you want to call it, the past 20 years, if you look at it as a whole, you've had a few good seasons, a lot of bad ones, but all in all, the one word to describe this all is just flat mediocre. Here's another question for you to even back that point. How many seasons have the Bears had winning seasons in? Not 500, winning seasons, above 500.
Since 2000?
Since 2000,
Let's
yes.
see. 2001, 2005, 2006, 2008, 2010, 2012, 2018, 7.
Bingo. 7. In 21 seasons, since this season is concluded, 21 seasons, 7 winning ones.
That's terrible. And the thing is in that time, they've only had 2 seasons where they were just really terrible.
Right.
2016 and I guess 2002 was 2002.
2002 was awful. Yeah, that was when they played in Champaign. They went 4-12, and if I remember correctly, they started off the season okay, and then everything just went to shit.
So the 2002 season is I went to a game that season. Let me pull up the schedule of 2002. So the 2002 season, I went to week 17 game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I believe went and won the Super Bowl that year. And the game was 15-0. There was not a touchdown scored in that game. It was 5 field goals. The score at halftime was 6-0. The other 9 points were scored in the fourth quarter. And the Bears, I think, only made it to the other side of the 50-yard line like 2 times that whole game. And it was cold. It was like, I think it was in the 30s. And I got surprised with the tickets. They were given to me as a Christmas present. And I took
Merry Christmas. Here's some crap.
And I took my dad. And we drove down from Joliet down to Champaign. And I was living in Philadelphia at the time. So Philadelphia doesn't get nearly as cold as it does in Chicago. So most of the time I lived there, I didn't wear a winter coat. I just wore a hooded sweatshirt because it wasn't that cold. And so I didn't even bring a winter coat with because I was back in Chicago for Christmas. And I got the tickets, and I didn't have a winter coat. So I went down there with a sweatshirt with a Bears jersey over the sweatshirt and a winter hat and a pair of jeans. That's what I wore, and it was cold. It was real cold.
And sounds like a miserable game.
It was a miserable game. And I just couldn't wait. They didn't score at all. They could not wait to get back to the car, just have that nonsense over with.
Hey, the 2002 Bears did start 2-0.
Yeah, I'm looking at the game log here. Statistics for that game. Adrian Peterson was the running back for the Bears. Not the good Adrian Peterson, the other Adrian Peterson.
The other Adrian Peterson, yep.
He had 7 attempts for 42 yards. Henry Burris was the quarterback. He threw for, do you know how many yards he threw for that in that game? He didn't get knocked out either. He played the entire game as the quarterback.
I'm going to say like 120.
78 yards.
Oh, God.
His quarterback rating was a 10.3. His quarterback rating was a 10.3. He was 7 for 19 for 78 yards and 4 interceptions.
Oh, good gravy.
And what's great is of those 78 yards, 30 of them were on one play.
I would be so pissed off if I drove down to Champaign-Urbana just to see that.
What's crazy is let's see. Why is this freezing?
Now, where did you guys sit What section? Because I've been to the stadium a number of times. I've gone to my fair share of Illinois games. So what section did you
I don't remember.
sit in? Do
It
you
was the
remember?
only time I was ever at that stadium, so I don't remember. Yeah, honestly. So
I was in second grade that season, or no, third grade, and I have very little memory of that season, probably just because it was so bad. The thing I remember most is seeing the progress of Soldier Field getting built, like in the newspaper and on TV. That's really all I remember of that season.
I take that back. Henry Burrs didn't play the whole game. Is Corey Souter came in for part of that game, and he
Who the hell is that?
and he threw for 59 yards, and he had a 31-yard pass. And Marty Booker threw one pass.
Yikes. 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 Yikes.
Yeah, the two starting quarterbacks combined for 200 yards passing total.
That is just brutal.
Yeah, it was 4 interceptions from Tampa Bay. Brad Maynard had 6 punts. Tom Tupa from the Tampa had 6 punts. There was 12 punts in the game. It was
The punt off.
yeah. So the two top receivers in the game combined for 73 yards receiving. So the leading receiver for Tampa had 41 yards, and the leading receiver for the Bears had 25 yards receiving.
Oof.
Michael Pittman ran for 90 yards. And it was such an abysmal game. Here's the Bears drive chart. Punt, 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 interception, end of half, punt, punt, interception, 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 end of game. Here's those drives. First drive, 3 plays. Second drive, 3 plays. Third drive, 6 plays. 5 plays, 5 plays. 0 plays. 11 plays. I'm sorry. 6 plays, 11 yards. 7 plays, 1 play, 2 play, 2 play. And then
Good Lord.
they had a 12-yard play or drive at the end of the game, but they didn't get into the end zone.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was brutal. Let's see. 10, 15, 30. They made it across midfield twice. That was a game I was at. That's the effect I have on these games.
Yikes.
So Bears fans, you should pay me to never go to a game ever again.
Well, luckily you can't be to blame for any of these losses this year.
Nope, I can't be blamed at all. Not I.
Isn't that crazy? We've gone an entire Bears season where there wasn't a soul in the stands for any of the home games.
Yep. Who knows what's going to look like at the start of next season.
Yeah, I know. I'd be surprised if it's full. I think next season there will be people in there. I just don't think it'll be full capacity.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's going to depend on what the distribution of the vaccine is looking like, because it is, scientists did a great job of getting this vaccine, and they got it to market, and then the distribution of it has been brutal.
Yeah, it's there needs to be some improvement there. That's for sure. If we want to get this eradicated as quick as possible.
I think based on the estimates of the number of people they expected to have vaccinated by January 1st, I think they hit 8% of that.
Oh boy, that's bad.
Yeah. So, looking bad for getting us all vaccinated, but in plenty of time for for football.
Yeah, I do want to end our Bears segment with some good news, some cool things. Cairo Santos, congrats to him. Franchise record, consecutive field goals made.
Absolutely perfect.
So he's what, 30 for 32 on the season, I believe.
And he better kicker than Robbie Gold this season.
Mm-hmm. Good as Cairo or good as Santos. That doesn't work. But that's
Santos
cool.
L kicker.
Yeah, I think he's earned his spot on this team in the future. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, I think
Sorry, Eddie Pinheiro.
No knock on Eddie Pinheiro, but Cairo Santos, you don't get the jitters when he goes out there to kick a 45-yarder. You're just like, oh, he's got this.
Yeah, exactly. When you play in 16 games and you kick 94%, you've earned your spot.
Yep.
But yeah, hooray, playoff-bound Bears. I keep having to remind myself that this team is technically going to be playing in the postseason. And, it's my final thoughts on that. It's a weird feeling because I know this is not a playoff caliber team, and I know they got really lucky to get in. But, at the same time, I remember several seasons, like 2012, for example, when they went 10-6 and they missed the playoffs. Or 2013 when they were one stop away from making the playoffs and they didn't make the playoffs. Or in 2008 when they went 9-7 and they didn't make the playoffs because they choked again the final week of the season. So I almost feel like it was kind of nice to see in some perspectives them being able to kind of just sneak into a playoff spot, because every year there's always that one team that just kind of sneaks in. And I'm always thinking, why isn't that ever the Bears? Well, this year it's the Bears. But if we're looking at the future outlook of this team, making the playoffs doesn't really do much for you.
No.
In fact, it could do more damage in the long run than good. But,
it really does.
We've been so deprived of the playoffs.
I mean, it's one thing you're going to see, but you're going to see the stark contrast of where you are compared to where the other playoff teams are. That's the one thing, and you're gonna have to use it as a measuring stick. You're in already. Can't take that away from you. And thanks to Arizona just absolutely shitting the bed down the final road. Like
all they had to do was not lose to the 49ers last week.
Or to the backup quarterback that had never played in an NFL game for the Rams.
I just watched the highlights. He was dropping some dimes.
I watched that game. Like, he had some good passes, but most of the time his damage was on the ground. They were running.
Yeah, he was running for it, yeah.
He for a guy that's never played, you're like, okay, all right. And that's what a good offensive coordinator, offensive genius does, is gives you a chance to win with a non-NFL quarterback.
But hey, I just got an update on my phone from ESPN, and I could say at least we're not the Jets, who are 9-3 or 9-23 the past several seasons. They just fired Adam Gase, it's just announced right now, and they missed out on Trevor Lawrence. So at least we're not them.
Yeah, and here's the thing: we all knew Adam Gase was going to get fired. I mean, that writing was on the wall because he was terrible. I feel bad for Jets fans because I don't think Sam Darnold is that bad, and I don't know where they're at with him. Like, you're going to run out of real estate in figuring out what he is. I think you have to make the decision this year on his fifth-year option. Do you pick it up, or do you let him have a situation where he's going to play out his final year of his deal? And it's tough because you haven't gotten a good glimpse of what he is because you've had an abysmal team around him. And, you would have drafted if you would have got the number one pick, you possibly could have drafted a quarterback. And you might still draft one at the number 2 pick. And then what do you have with this guy? Where does he go? And I don't think the guy got a fair shake.
Yeah. I mean, if they have a number 1 overall pick, you don't pass up on Trevor Lawrence, period. Because the potential that he has is still light years ahead of Sam Darnold. regardless of what you think of Sam Darnold. But right now they're in a very, very weird position where you're still a top pick team. You're in the top 5. The far and away biggest asset in this draft is going to go right ahead of you. You just fired your head coach. Is Sam Darnold the guy going forward? There's a lot of questions there. I mean, they are kind of in a rut. I mean, the Bears are in a huge rut right now. They are stuck in football hell right now. But at least with the Bears, you could say, you know what? There's enough talent to at least compete. If we can somehow make some nice tweaks, then maybe we can give our shot in the near future. Where the Jets, they're a long way from being anything even remotely respectable.
Yeah, they're a long way, and they had an opportunity to win today against a Patriots team that had nothing to play for. And a lot of people were like, you know what? Bill Belichick might just sort of roll over on this one because it improve his playoff or his draft pick status. And man, the Jets couldn't even beat a team that had nothing to play for. And they could, they were locked in number 2 pick, so nothing could change that. So you could at least go out there and win one for the Gipper. And you're just like, nope, just poop the bed again.
Nope.
So, yeah, I mean, the Bears are in a better position than that, but man, that Jets team is
still not ideal. Yeah.
I mean, the Jaguars team that's getting the number 1 pick, I think is in a far better position than the Jets are.
Oh, of course. I mean, you're about to get one of the NFL's future assets.
With that, you're going to have, and you've got a ton of money to spend. And we saw them play the other week, and they've got a few guys that can play on that team.
Sure.
And so you're like, okay, and they're probably going to get Urban Meyer as their head coach.
Yeah, I've heard those rumblings. I've said it a few times with some friends. The Jaguars can do a 180 pretty fast here.
Just like they did the 180 from being in the NFC or AFC Championship a couple years ago.
Yeah, and they almost won that game too.
Yeah, they should have won it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the Bears got, it sucks. It sucks that they had to play Green Bay and they lost badly. But I think it was a reality check that they are not the team that won like those couple games in a row. They're not that team.
No.
And so, it's I think what you're going to see is a reality check with this game, a reality check next week when they play the Saints, and hopefully they make the right decision and don't just Band-Aid this. I think it's time to really clean house and bring in a staff that is a winning staff.
Yeah, you don't strike for 8-8. You want a Super Bowl.
What you're supposed to be your window ended up being one season, and you botched that.
Yeah.
The success that the wins that Ryan Pace has don't outweigh the negatives. You went out and you spent a bunch of money on a kicker that can't kick and lost you a game. Like he was your answer. He was the guy you went and spent a bunch of money to go get to win you those games. You drafted Mitch Trubisky ahead of a Hall of Famer, a guy that's on a path to be a Hall of Famer. Potentially 2. And so it's you've just really set your team back. You brought them to a good spot, and then you absolutely stymied them.
You're treading water. You're treading water at this point.
So I think you just need to bring in, like I've said it before, you need a president of football operations and you need a GM. And I'm even okay. I'm going to throw this out there. It's not my ideal situation. If you want to keep Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy another year, but you bring in a president of football operations to oversee everything and for them to evaluate next year and see what they think and make that be their call. Do I fire the coach and the GM? I would be somewhat okay with that. But you need to have accountability.
You will have the president of football operations sitting right next to Ryan Pace, and he has a squirt bottle. And every time that Ryan Pace wants to do something that doesn't seem ideal, said president will squirt Ryan Pace with the bottle in the face multiple times until he stops.
Can he have a fly swatter too?
I think I'm going to re-sign Mike Glennon. Squirt, 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 squirt.
I'm
going to get on the phone, fly swatter.
We're going to make Mitchell Trubisky a 5-year offer. Squirt,
Whack,
squirt,
whack,
squirt, 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 squirt.
He just unscrews the cap and just dumps it all over his head.
He fills it with holy water and starts spraying him.
And the funny thing is that during this whole ordeal, the president of football operations doesn't say a word.
He just sits there and looks like a grumpy driver's ed teacher. With his arm folded. He looks like the guy from Pixar's Up, the old man.
Yeah, right.
Just sits there with that grumpy, I just pooped my pants face, and he just looks over at Ryan Pace and just starts squirt, 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 squirt.
Ooh, look at this. I think we should bring this guy back. Which guy? This guy right here.
Or they
Matt
get
Barkley. Squirt, 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 squirt.
They get Red Foreman from that 70s show.
Yeah, right.
He just looks at him. What are you doing, dumbass?
Underrated television character. He's great.
All right. Should we talk about the other abysmal situation that we just missed talking about last week?
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on it, so I kind of want to go off on it.
All right. So the thing we have in mind is we're moving to Cubs, obviously, is the Cubs made the trade, giving up Yu Darvish, Victor Caratini for Zach Davies and 3 teenagers. Or sorry, one guy just turned 20. So 3 teenagers and a 20-year-old.
Guys who can't drink in this country. Let's
Yes.
just say that.
Yes, none of them, they're all a long way from being able to drink alcohol legally in this country.
Yeah.
If you told me, hey, we are going to trade Yu Darvish. Okay. I've said it before on the show. I'm okay with it, but you got to get a haul. And outside of Zach Davies, who is a mid-rotation guy, of the 4 prospects you got, do you know how many combined minor league games they have played in American soil?
Have they played any?
Owen Casey has played 0. Ishmael Mina has played 0. Reginald Presidio has played 0. Yisan Santana has played 41 in the Arizona League.
Well, there you go.
So it's not like, you know what, they saw a lot of in these kids. They just got guys that we don't know anything about.
Yeah, so we, like you said, we talked about it before. If you could get a haul for a starter who is going to be 35, okay, because where this Cubs team is, they're kind of treading water themselves. They're clearly good enough to be competing for the postseason. They just won the division. It was a weird year, but they won the division. They have made the playoffs, 5 of the last 6 years. But the truth of the matter is, the past 3 some years, you have not been good enough to go all the way. We remember what happened in 2018. They missed the playoffs despite a winning record. In 2019, you were pretty much mediocre, 84 wins. Last year, 60-game season, you won the division despite being a train wreck on offense. And while this is all happening, you don't have the minor league assets that a lot of these teams have now. Your development has been pretty poor the past few years. After building up the core that won you a World Series, the development has not been there at all. And that is an absolute recipe for success in this day and age. Look at the Dodgers. Look at the Rays, for goodness sake. Look at what the Padres are doing. Look at what the White Sox are doing. Look at all these up-and-coming teams that look like they're going to be the contenders of baseball. They have a thing in common. They've been able to develop. The Cubs have not been able to do that the past few years. They need to get a restocked farm system. They need to develop better. Yes, I think that it is time for major changes. But what bothers me, what bothers me is that this trade, the motivation, in my opinion, was not first and foremost the future. It was for the Chicago Cubs, a big market team, to operate like the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Absolutely. It was absolutely a salary dump. It was a terrible salary dump. How do you get such a light return and you pick up some of Yu Darvish's salary?
Now, here's the one thing I will say. I can't judge the return yet. These kids could end up being studs. We don't know. I mean, they were ranked as international prospects. They could be studs. But here's the thing. We're not going to know what they're going to be for 3-4 years. It's not like you got top guys from the system of the Padres who are established prospects. And yes, established prospects aren't guaranteed either, but you at least know what you're going to have sooner rather than later. And they have a higher upside because of their experience in American minor league baseball. So there's a big difference right there, is you don't know what you have. The return, you won't truly know for the next few years. I mean, look at Fernando Tatis. He was a nobody. Look at Josh Donaldson when we traded him away, he was a nobody. And Fernando Tatis looks like the future of this game. And, we've seen a lot of guys come from that. But they could also be nothing. We don't know. These are lottery tickets we have. It shows to me that they are willing to shed money and kind of tear it down more than reshuffle here.
They absolutely did not get any of the top 10 picks from the farm system of the Padres for a guy that just finished second in the Cy Young ballot and with 3 years left on his contract.
Here's what scares me.
And you threw in a catcher, a really serviceable catcher.
Yeah, now you have to find a backup. Because you know what? There's nobody major league ready. Miguel Amaya is your upcoming catcher prospect. He's not ready.
Even if he was ready, he needs to play every day. So what are you going to do? You need a backup catcher, and you can't have your star catcher play backup because he's got to play every day. You need him in your lineup, and you can't have your future catcher play backup because he needs to play every day because he's still a kid. So you're in a crappy situation. You have to go out and find a catcher now. You're right. Absolutely. Have to find a catcher.
Player manager David Ross.
It might have to come to that.
And we can't really afford a backup catcher, so David, we're going to have you do double duty. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's the way that they're handling this so far. This offseason has just been dog shit tacos.
Well, and here's the other frustrating too, Sean. If that's what you got for Yu Darvish, your most valuable player last year, what do you expect to get for Chris Bryant, who's coming off a career worst year, if you're trying to trade him?
You know what I'm just looking at? Not for nothing. Reginald Presidio, one of the guys that they got in this trade, who's 17 years old. Major League Base, MLB.com has him as in the top 10 of the Cubs farm system now.
What does that tell you about our farm system?
It's terrible. And they don't expect him to be a major leaguer until 2024.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's a long ways away. That's what's really frustrating here. And
So
I
those
get it. The market.
those 4 guys they got now rank 10, 11, 16, and 17 in the Cubs farm system.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of Cubs fans paying attention to the minor leagues in the next few years to see how these guys do. And I understand the market is in a pretty bad place right now. There was no minor league season last year, so these top prospects obviously haven't played in normal circumstances outside these taxi squad alternate sites. But still, you would think that you could net at least one top prospect when trading a National League Cy Young runner-up who can miss bats and throws hard.
And a switch hitting catcher.
And a switch hitting catcher, yes. Both of them. And the only major league piece you got back, as you mentioned, Zach Davies. And Zach Davies, as a middle, lower the rotation guy, is a solid pitcher. But Sean, here's the scary thing. Their rotation, as it stands right now, nobody throws 90-plus miles an hour.
Yep. I mean, Zach Davies is a
Poor man's Kyle Hendricks.
He really is.
And Kyle Hendricks, you don't mind because he's good year in, year out.
Yeah, Zach Davies is a changeup pitcher.
Yeah,
and
he's a changeup sinker guy. Yep.
And 2020 was arguably his best year of his career, and he was a 1.4 WAR. So he should be on a good rotation. He should be like a 4.
A 4, exactly.
And he's our 2.
You know what I think is if we're looking ahead at this rotation, if I'm just going to talk about the rotation itself, you need to get somebody else in here. Whether it's trade, whether it's free agents, you're not going to get Marcus Stroman. You're not going to get Trevor Bauer. You're not going to get probably any top 4 starting free agent, but you need to get somebody in here because the way I see it is you're going to have Davies, you're going to have Hendricks. I think what is going to be really big this year is Adbert Alzolay. I think this is the year where you say, we're taking the training wheels off. You have been in our system for a while. I think he's shown enough promise where you can say, you know what, we might have something in this guy because I like his stuff a lot. I think you got to take the training wheels off and say, you're starting every 5 days. If you're going to be a future starter, you're going to have to do it at some point. Now's your time to do it.
I mean, you have to, sort of. They're not going to pony up cash for a legit starter.
Yeah, we can't afford it. Yeah.
So I don't know where else you go unless you just go, you know what? We're going to go, we're not going to sign anybody. You just got to go into what you have in house. And maybe John Lester resigns, but
that's what I was going to say. They're going to bring him back dirt cheap.
But he's a garbage pitcher at this point.
I mean, he's going to be like Eddie Harris, throwing balls that are covered in Vagisil and snot and jalapeno juice. Your number 2 starter could be an old, washed-up John Lester come opening day.
So right now, let's see. Your rotation is like Hendricks, Zach Davies, Alec Mills.
Yep.
And Albert Alzolay and
Colin Ray, Tyson Miller, Braylon Marquez. And Braylon Marquez is one of their top prospects, but I see him starting as a reliever.
Yeah, that's what I see him as too. He's still young, man.
So yeah,
he's 21 years old. Like, I don't think he's ready.
According to MLB.com, the projected depth chart shows the rotation of your top 5 being Hendricks, Davies, Mills, Alzolay, Colin Ray.
That is not a World Series rotation.
No. Ideally, with what you have now, I'd say you try to switch out a Colin Ray for a veteran that can at least be solid. You move Alec Mills down to the 4 or 5 spot. You let Alzolay try to develop, as he is one of your younger prospects you're trying to groom into. And then that's your rotation, basically. It's not the worst, but it's not great. I wouldn't even say it's good. You at least can count on Kyle Hendricks being really good. Zach Davies will be solid, not great, not terrible. Alec Mills will be a 5 starter, and Adbert Alzolay, I think he's got a lot of potential, but at the end of the day, we don't really know what he is yet in the long run because he hasn't been a starter outside a handful of spot starts. And as you and I both know, being a spot starter versus a regular starter, it's different mentally and physically on you. And we don't know what he's like as an everyday starter yet.
What could Jed Hoyer do right now to justify this trade of Yu Darvish and Victor Caratini to you as a Cubs fan and make you feel okay? What could he say to justify it?
I mean, he tried to say that it wasn't financially motivated the other day in the press conference, and I know I'm not buying that.
Okay, I guess since he's sort of limited what he can say, what could he do to make you feel better?
Go sign a free agent, a good one. And I know he's handcuffed by the Ricketts, but make a move. Do the best you can. I mean, you're telling me they can't spend a few Is it really that dire where they can't spend a few $1 million to get somebody in here? Are the big market Cubs that strapped for cash?
My fear is what's going to happen is they're either just going to move on from Chris Bryant and just take the compensatory pick or trade him at the trade deadline. Because you can't trade him in spring because you're not going to get the value for him. You got to hope that he has a bounce back and trade something for him. But I don't think they're going to re-sign. They're going to do an extension for Rizzo. I think they're going to work on signing an extension to Javi Baez.
I think so too.
Which is frustrating because he is going to age the worst out of that core group of guys. That bat is going to age badly and quickly.
Yeah, it is. I mean, with Rizzo too, you could extend him a few years, but he's no spring chicken. He's not old yet, but in a few years he's going to be in his mid-30s, and he's got the bad back issues, so that's obviously a concern. People will tell you that these guys should have been extended a while ago. And I mean, people point, look at what Rick Hahn has done with Yoan Moncada and Eloy Jimenez and those people. But here's the thing. You were not going to get that club-friendly extension with Chris Bryant as a rookie. Knowing that his agent is Scott Boras, that was never going to happen. Never going to happen. So you have to try to make the best of a situation right now. And unfortunately, a lot of things have gone against that because your core players are coming off career worst seasons last year that killed their value. A lot of people make this argument, and you know what? Maybe they're right. If you were going to start trading away core pieces for the future, you might be a year too late. Because despite the missing of the playoffs in 2019, your core had good seasons. Chris Bryant had an all-star season in 2019. Wilson Contreras had an all-star season in 2019. Jason Hayward had a great season in 2019. Anthony Rizzo had a typical season in 2019. And Kyle Schwarber, he almost hit 40 home runs that year. He had a career year that year. You stood pat. The argument was there that you maybe waited a year too late because you knew you weren't going to be spending on the core for 2020. If you weren't going to add to it and you were kind of stuck in the middle, then you could say there was your chance to make those big changes when the value of the core was high. And that's what really sucks about this.
I honestly think they're going to pare down salary and they're going to tank and try to do a rebuild with what they have. They're like, okay, well, you know what? We'll get Miguel Amaya next year, maybe late in the year this year. Braylon Marquez will get up this year. Brennan Davis next year.
Ed Howard's going to work his way up through the system, not to the majors yet, but he's going to work his way up.
Yeah, probably in 2023. I'm guessing you'll see Ed Howard.
Probably.
Cole Franklin next year. Ryan Jensen next year. Chase Strumpf next year. Burl Caraway next year. So you're looking at a whole crop of young players coming up next year and see how that goes. I think that's what they're doing. And I think that's why Theo Epstein walked away.
Yeah, he knew. He knew. This is basically a paying of the debt season.
Yep. He knew that it was going to have to be trade away Yu Darvish, dump salary, and he didn't want to pay the piper. And, I think some of it is he didn't want to pay the piper, but I think some of it was, why should he be the one making these decisions when he's definitely not going to be there for the long haul? So Jed Hoyer should be the one making those decisions on what they do, because you can't be like, oh, yep, here I traded Yu Darvish for this, whatever this crop is, and then peace out, everybody. Because I think that's a dick move. But he's like, I'm not going to be there to pay the piper. And what's even more frustrating is they don't have a GM right now. Jed was promoted to president of baseball operations, and they don't have a GM, and they're not even looking for one right now. And that's
sorry, can't afford it.
You can't afford to pay a GM. And so you don't have anybody to put Jed Hoyer in check. And you're right. It's hard to grade this Yu Darvish trade until we see what those guys are. And honestly, I think Zach Davies is this is his last year of a contract. I think they're going to flip him at the trade deadline too.
Yeah, I wrote about Zach Davies in a Cubbies Crib article a few days ago. And that's one of the things I said. I'm like, look, if the Cubs aren't in it and Zach Davies is having a good season, they'll be a contender looking for a starter, lower end depth though. So, that would be obviously an option. But Sean, here's the weird thing. Despite the trade, despite the outlook of this team right now, if you look at the division as it is, they still have a shot at it. This is not a good division.
No, it's not. But it's just so frustrating is, this team, when they came up and they won the World Series, you're like, all right, this team has a lot of promise, but they didn't develop players like they should have. They didn't develop pitching, and you got a lot of bad luck.
The league passed them by pretty fast. That's the way I look at it.
Yes. And, it's I don't want to call this a reset or a retool. I just want to rebuild. You know what? If you're already having a fire sale, you already traded your best player last year, far and away your best player last year, you might as well move Chris Bryant. Tell Rizzo you're not signing to an extension. Don't sign Javi Baez to an extension. You're going to pay him a ton of money, and I don't think you're ever going to see the return on that investment. And just start that rebuild process.
I mean, if I had to choose between just being mired in mediocrity versus rebuilding, obviously I think rebuilding is a better path, even though it's a lot more painful. I just don't want to be stuck in purgatory week after, year after year after year. And it sucks that we have to be in this position. It feels like the position was avoidable. If you didn't cheapen out the past 2 years, and I'm not saying they had to go all out and spend a ton of money, but if you would have brought in some reinforcements, and first and foremost, if you would have just developed better, if you would have done a better job at developing, things could be so different.
Yep.
This was supposed to be the prime window to add on to that World Series. After they won in 2016, I thought by 2020, 2021, we would have had at least another trip there. At least another trip. And maybe even, dare I say, another trophy. I really thought that this core was going to bring home multiple World Series. But they didn't.
Nope. Chris Bryant hasn't been the same since he hurt his shoulder.
No. He hasn't.
Not the same guy. And, you can argue the degree of the drop, but he hasn't been the same guy. And Anthony Rizzo puts up good numbers, but it's not always. I think a lot of times it's garbage time numbers. And you just haven't come up big when you've needed to come up big. And this team they've been good enough to win the division, not anywhere good enough to compete for a World Series.
Well, look at and look at all these guys, what they've done in the postseason since 2016. Like hitting wise, garbage. They haven't been able to hit anything. I think Rizzo has like 3 hits since the World Series in the postseason.
And then you look at a team like the Dodgers, who have the best team in baseball, and they have a good farm system too. That's where you wanted to be. You look at the Padres. The Padres, they brought in Snell and Darvish and Caratini without touching a guy in their top 10 of their farm system. And they have the number 2 farm system in baseball.
Yeah, it's amazing. That was supposed to be us.
And you were like, okay, well, we'll trade Gleyber Torres to get a closer. You're like, okay, I can buy that one because you don't win the World Series without Aroldis Chapman. But then you trade for Quintana. You're like, you justified that at first, but now you're like, okay, well, what did that ultimately get us?
Not far, unfortunately. I mean, I would argue that Quintana was a big factor of the final stretch in 2017, but that's about it.
But what did that get us?
Not a World Series.
Yeah. So it's hard to justify that haul you gave up for Jose Quintana when it didn't get you to a World Series. And, a lot of the moves just didn't pan out. And so you've traded away guys from your farm system and weakened it. And the guys that came up from the farm system weren't the guys that you thought they were. You thought you were going to have a perennial MVP candidate in Chris Bryant, and Rookie of the Year, then MVP, and then after that he's just dipped. Javi Baez.
I'd still argue that he's good when healthy, but he's not quite that level.
Right.
But your point still stands. It's not the same.
Kyle Schwarber was supposed to be, like a Babe Ruth type bat. And the guy has had his struggles. You still don't know exactly what you have with Ian Happ. You've seen some really good flashes. You've seen some really bad flashes.
Look at Almora. That completely busted out.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a dud. So, these guys didn't pan out like you would expect it to.
The other problem too is they stocked up on veteran pitching for the rotation, and their lack of development didn't replace them. John Lester got old. Then you had Jake Arrieta fade away, and then he left via free agency. John Leckie retired. I mean, Kyle Hendricks is the only rotation man right now left from that 2016 team, unless you bring John Lester back. But as it stands right now, he's still a free agent, so he's the only one that's left. And yeah, Yu Darvish was a big upgrade via free agency, but look at all the other guys they tried to put in that rotation outside Darvish since then. Tyler Chatwood didn't exactly work out. He pitched better last year before he got hurt, obviously, but he spent most of the year hurt. And
well, I mean, even that first year of the 3-year deal was abysmal,
bad, very bad.
But the second year was okay, and when he was healthy, the third year, you're like, he was. If you could have got what you got from him being healthy during the second and third year of that deal, all 3 years of that deal, you would have been like, all right, we feel like that was probably a decent signing. But you didn't get that. You had some injuries and you had that bad first year.
And the other problem, too, is a lot of his effective work in 2019 was really out of the bullpen.
Where he was an expensive bullpen piece.
Right, exactly. I'm just talking starter. Like, most of it was he had some good spot starts, but you signed him to a lot of money, and you wanted a reliable starter, and you didn't always get that. So, that didn't work out. Brett Anderson didn't work out. You remember that whole thing, Brett Anderson, and I mean, give kudos to Theo. Cole Hamels was a very good move, a very, very good move. But still, you didn't get enough.
Here's a question. Kyle Schwarber is a free agent still.
Mm-hmm.
Would you bring him back if the price was right? Or are you just done?
I'd bring him back if the price is right. I mean, here's the thing. Who else are they going to get? At least with Schwarber, you say, hey, he may miss the ball a lot, but at least he hits home runs and walks.
What is the right price for him, you think?
The right price? Well, I'd say per year. What was his arbitration? Like
something.
$8 million?
Yeah, something like that.
I think if you got him at 6, 7, that's acceptable.
I say 5. I think 5's the number.
5's the number. I could see that too. I'd say, I said 7 a bit conservatively. I would think more around 6. So I'm kind of where you're at.
Is if he would accept a 2-year $10 million, 2-year $12 million, would you sign him?
2-year $12 million, I think, is where I'd go at the most right now. But that's probably the most. I think 2-year, maybe 10, 11 million would be okay. Just seems pointless to non-tender him and then bring him back for the same or more expensive, and I don't think that's happening.
There's zero chance that's happening.
Yeah, exactly. But, all I'm trying to say is, what other options out there that you can quote-unquote afford? I mean, the Cubs should be able to afford stuff, but they're not spending money. Whether we like it or not, they're not going to be spending a lot of money. That's just not going to happen. So you look at the outfielders that are out there. I mean,
if they don't sign somebody, what's their starting outfield?
Jason Hayward, Ian Happ, and Phillip Ervin. I mean, what's Jerry Harrison Jr. up to these days?
I mean, do they? None of their outfielders in their minor league system that are any good are are anywhere near coming up, ready to come up.
Right, Brennan Davis is your big guy, but he's not ready yet. Okay, so I'm looking at left fielders on Spot Track available. There's Yoenis Cespedes,
And you're
who
not.
you could take an absolute flyer on, but I wouldn't.
No.
Brantley, he's going to be too expensive. There's Marcelo Zuna. He's going to be too expensive. You got Brett Gardner, but he's older and washed. So, there's Jock Peterson.
He's going to be more expensive than that.
His value right now is at about 6.5, $7 million. So right around where Schwarber was last year. So yeah, that means that's probably not going to happen. Matt Joyce, Ben Gamel, Matt Kemp, and then a bunch of just no names. So out of that cream of the crop, if you want somebody that you think can at least produce, Kyle Schwarber is probably your option. There's Eddie Rosario's out there too, but he might command a bit more money. Not much more, but I think he will command more. What, are you going to bring in washed up Matt Kemp? You're going to bring in Ben Gamel? Matt Joyce? Washed up Brett Gardner? Because Marcelo Zuna and Michael Brantley are the two most valuable left fielders, pure left fielders right now on the market. They're going to probably go for $20-some million. That's not happening. Unless you want to say, we are going to take an absolute waiver. I don't think it'd be smart. I don't want them to do it. But you say, if it's cheap enough, we'll take an absolute waiver on Yoenis Cespedes. But please don't do that. Please, please, please don't do that. For the love of God, don't.
Yeah, this is a lost season.
It's not going to be fun. It's going to be incredibly mediocre as it stands.
But
Unless they make more moves. Then it could go bad.
But I do want to change the subject, wrap this up with one last topic. The Blackhawks re-signed Dylan Strome
Cool.
to $3 million a year. 2 years, $6 million contract. What in the hell are they paying Dylan Strome $3 million a year for?
Hell if I know. I'm already depressed about the Blackhawks.
Wait, hold on a second. I'm watching the Sunday Night Football game, and it says Wild Card Weekend. It says the Bears Saints is going to be on Nickelodeon and Prime Video.
It is. Yes, it's going to be a Nicktoons game. Woo!
Is the Bears game going to be on Nickelodeon?
Yes. Yes. It's going to be on Nickelodeon. So when you're watching SpongeBob next Sunday, you better be ready because at 3:40, it's going to be Wild Card Weekend, Bears and Saints.
What in the hell? Like, that can't be right.
No, it's true. I've seen the ads. Nickelodeon's going to be showing Wild Card NFL games.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
And of course, the Bears have to be the ones playing on Nickelodeon.
Yep.
Of course.
Yep. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? The Bears?
Who plays like a pineapple behind center? Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky.
And hit the turf and flop like a fish. Mitch Trubisky.
Oh, man. This is bad.
Yeah. Your reaction was priceless.
The Bulls stink. I didn't want to talk. We had a lot of other things to talk about. The Bulls stink.
Woo!
The Cubs are going to stink. The Bears stink. The Blackhawks are going to stink. The White Sox are the saving grace of this city. Chicago sports stink.
And yet, 4 of the 5 teams in 2020 made the playoffs. 2 of them complete bullshit. I mean,
God, this stinks.
dude, but back to the Blackhawks. Jonathan Tays news. That's not good.
Do we know any more?
No, we don't.
I mean, my mind obviously goes to the last time we had a situation like this, and it was Brian Bickle.
Yeah.
That just scares the hell out of me.
Yeah. There is a small, and I don't want to draw any conclusions, but there's that small part of me that's worried. Oh God, is this going to be like career ending? I mean, remember Brian Bickle? Remember Marian Hossa?
Yeah.
Boy, did we really sell our souls to the devil for those 3 cups, man. So you're going to be without your top prospect. You're going to be without your all-star captain to start the season. And have you seen their schedule?
Yeah.
Nice and filled with Tampa Bay and Dallas.
It's brutal. It's going to be brutal. It's a very big price to pay to be back in a division with the Red Wings.
And it ain't even worth it. The rivalry is going to be the rivalry of puke now. They're going to be battling for last place. So that's where we're at. Are you ready, kids? Aye, aye, Mitch Trubisky. I cannot hear you. Aye, aye, Mitch Trubisky. What? Throw it into double coverage? Okay.
Oh man, I don't know. We'll have more thoughts next week after this playoff debacle, and hopefully next week we're talking about firing and hiring and.
What? You're not looking forward to that big clutch playoff win that we're gonna get against the Saints in New Orleans?
You mean the Saints game on Nickelodeon and Sunday afternoon?
Mm-hmm. Hey, speaking of suck, last week's episode, I remember when we wrapped up filming or recording, I should say, at our normal time around 9:00, like it is right now. And the minute I get upstairs, I see how the Bulls lost on like that buzzer beater.
Yeah. The Bulls are not good. But I mean, they're gonna get there. Not good, but they're gonna. Billy Donovan has said that this team has no idea how to win, and he basically said this was a losing organization full of losers, and you have to learn how to win.
He's right.
He's right. This organization failed these young players, and they don't know how to win, and he's letting them learn by sucking. And I mean, one of these days he's going to be like, listen, it sucks to lose like this. And it's going to be a tool. Either you start buying into his system, or changes have to be made. A lot of people are talking about moving on from Zach LaVine. You gotta get better production. Obviously, Kobe White and Zach LaVine are your 2 best scorers, but they need to play better than they did against Milwaukee. They had too many turnovers, and you just have to get better production from your backcourt.
It takes time to wring out losing culture out of an organization. You don't just come in and say, oh, losing culture gone. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of mental power to do that.
That was why I was absolutely shocked that they didn't bring in the baby giraffe to be that last bench guy, because He played for this organization when they were winners. He played for Billy Donovan. He's played at a high level in this league. And he could come in and almost like a player coach and be like, you know, he was a high energy guy. He was a guy that made people around him better. And you come out there and be like, listen, he's a veteran, respected veteran. This is what you need to do to win. And he already knows how Billy Donovan wants to coach and play. And I just thought that was a missed opportunity for not doing that.
Yep.
I don't know. But is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't. I might have to get out my old Teen Nick shirt out next week for the Bears game.
Oh, man. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn app, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.